And you need to get your life right with God. And he said something that I don't think I would have the courage to say unless I knew it was directly from God. He said, God has revealed to me that if you give your life to God and serve him with your life, he's going to heal your son. That is a pretty big statement to make when somebody's 3-year-old child is lying in the hospital and it looks like they're going to pass away. That's a big statement to make. And my dad said that he was telling our family years and years later, and he said that he felt like his initial reaction was, God, that is not fair that you would use my son to get to me. But, it was short-lived, and he realized if this is what it takes to have my son live, then I will do this. And so he prayed, and they went to the hospital together. The gentleman prayed for my brother, and literally a week later, he was up riding a trike around in the hospital, and the staff were astonished. And he was 3 years old when this happened, and we know just from science that permanent memories aren't really lodged in your brain until close to 4 years old. So he didn't really have a lot of permanent memories of this event himself. Grew up hearing it. We all grew up hearing it, because it literally did change the whole trajectory of our family's life. My dad, instead of having 10 children raised by an alcoholic, now my dad truly did keep his covenant with God, and he went into pastoral training, and by the time I was born, he was already my pastor, serving in a church. And so that's how life can just change the direction of where we're going. But in God's mercy and grace, when my brother was an adult, he himself went into ministry, and he was pastoring for quite a long time. And then he had a young family, and they were on the road pastoring and doing a lot of traveling in ministry. And he decided that he just needed to take some time away from ministry for a while, and so he did. And he was working for an ambulance service in Alberta, where he was living at the time. And when someone was deceased, when you picked them up, you had to take them to the hospital and sign them in. And the closest hospital to where he was living rurally, but the closest hospital was Edmonton, which is where my family had been living when all of this occurred years and years before. So he went to the hospital one night, and he was signing in a deceased patient, or deceased, not patient, not client. I don't know what you'd call it, person. And when you sign them in, a doctor also has to come and sign them in. And so he was going through this process, just normal. It's what he did all the time. And the doctor, my brother signed the sheet, and the doctor looked at his name, and he said, "Oh, Crocker, did you have family that lived in this area years ago?" And he told him kind of the number of years, and my brother said, "Well, nobody by this name, because my dad's family lived around here, but they were sisters, so they were all married and had different last names, so no." And then he said, "Well, no, like our family lived here years ago." And as it turned out, this doctor was an intern at the hospital when my brother had polio. The power went off one night, and he pumped his iron lung all night to keep him alive. And he remembered this little boy who miraculously, still no explanation, he used the term miracle. A miracle happened, and this little boy somehow recovered and left the hospital just fine. And none of the staff could understand how. And he was telling this story of my brother to my brother. And I just thought, that is the mercy and the grace of God. At a time in his life when he just really needed, he had been in ministry and busy with his kids and all that kind of stuff, and just really felt like he needed to take a time away. And God used this opportunity to say, "I don't want you to miss out on what I have for you." And so that was his call back into ministry. And it was just such a beautiful moment, how God uses things like that to take us to where we need to be. That was part of his journey. Just that's the kind of home that I was raised in, where there was just an abundance of faith because that's the story that I was raised knowing of my family's conversion. Both my parents coming from non-Christian family backgrounds, and then having this amazing event happen that changed the course of their history. And I look at where I'm working now, and I just feel like every day we have opportunities to change the course of people's lives. Women come in with messy backgrounds and have been through all kinds of things, and they sit and unpack their baggage in front of us and bring us into their journey. And I just feel like what a tremendous privilege and opportunity we have to sit with these women and help them make decisions for their future, where they can also see a change in direction for their lives. I just feel it's so wonderful that God constantly is giving second chances and third chances and fourth chances. And it's amazing how many people come in, and when we get to the question, do you have a faith background of any kind? Which we like to ask. We don't have to ask it, but we like to ask just to kind of know where we're at dealing with some of the women. It's amazing how many women say, well, I wasn't raised in church, but I have a grandma, or I have somebody in my life. There's actually a very small percentage that don't have any kind of faith in their background anywhere. And so it gives us this opportunity to kind of bring faith into the conversation. And I just love that. So when we lived on the coast, my three sisters were there as well. And it's the first time in all of our adult lives that all four of us got to live in the same community. So for 5 years, Jerry and I endured the weather of the coast. He golfed, I think, 11 months of the year, and was feeling really gypped when there was snow for a week or two and he couldn't golf. And our kids, we had to stop sending pictures of like flowers blooming in February and stuff like that back here, because they were not appreciating the beauty that we were experiencing out there. But we knew it would be a season of our life, and when both Mom and Dad passed away in 2021, we knew it was time to come back to our kids and our grandkids, and we were happy to do so. We were happy to do so. And it's been a nice winter this winter to kind of welcome us back to Manitoba, and we're good with that too. Hope it doesn't go on for another month, but we're good with it. So March 2020. Anybody remember that date? March 2020. What a whirlwind we have all been through in the last 3 years, hey? Who would have thought that we would have experienced the things that we've experienced in the last 3 years? Things that have been pretty scary sometimes. Things that have been mind-blowing. Things that have been divisive, eh? Like really separated families, separated churches. COVID had a lot of really weird twists and turns along the way. So you can switch slides there. That was my post, March 2020, based on Chronicles 7:14. Anybody know what it says? If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray. We started seeing all kinds of stuff on the news, right? By March 2020, we were seeing global stuff happening, a lot of deaths, and, remember all the stuff that happened in some of the European countries. It was just out of control, and we were seeing this stuff on the news, and it was looking pretty frightening. I think we were all figuring out by March 2020 that something was happening that we had not experienced before. And I think we were all starting to feel the pressure of it. So that was my post. I sort of felt like, okay, this is serious. We need to buckle down and pray. And so April 2020, you can go to the next one. I posted this because I felt like I could already see there was a tremendous amount of fear happening. People were afraid. They were starting to really experience a fear that was beyond what we could control. We were no longer kind of in control of what was going on with COVID, and I think people were really starting to sense that. Mom and Dad were now in lockdown, and you can go to the next slide. Yeah, that's how we celebrated Easter with Mom that year. She was on the 3rd floor of her building and could only look out the window at us. And Dad was in the same building, but on the other side. And he was in residential care because he had dementia, and Mom was on the assisted living side. And they were not allowed to see each other within the same building, which was really kind of tough to handle. And for a dementia patient, that was rough. He did not understand what was going on at all. And he would go to bed at night and cry because he was lonely. And he didn't know, he probably didn't know how long it had been since Mom had been there, but he knew he hadn't seen her for a while. And so actually, thankfully, Fraser Valley Healthcare, which is what we were under out there, they petitioned and actually got it approved for my mom to be able to, after 4 months, she was able to go and see him again on his side, we were so thankful because he just didn't understand. It was pretty tough, and I know you guys all have your own COVID stories and the weird things that happened and what we all experienced through that time. It was a pretty weird time of life, and we all had to adjust and do things that we probably never thought we would be doing. But we had to, because that's just the life that we experienced at that point. So my final post from 2020 was this, and I guess I was feeling fairly brave at that point in time. We'd made it from March to December, and we were still alive, and I was feeling, okay, we're going to continue trusting you, Lord. And it sounds pretty brave. I didn't really know at that point in time, like we never do. We never know what the future holds. I did not know what 2021 had in store. So the first thing that happened in 2021, my dad passed away. His dementia had sort of like he was pretty much the same for the last 5 years of his life, health-wise. There wasn't really a lot of change. And just out of the blue, one day in January, they had showered him and put him back in his chair and got him dressed, and he just put his head down and he was gone within moments. And I mean, that's kind of a wonderful way to go. We were thankful that he didn't have to suffer with all of the confusion and stuff that was going on anymore. We were right in the lockdown season of COVID. In Manitoba, you maybe aren't aware, or maybe you are aware, but Manitoba had some of the toughest restrictions across Canada for COVID as far as lockdown restrictions. The province was locked down in the sense that you were, I think, the only province where if you left the province, you had to quarantine for 2 weeks when you came back in. None of the other provinces had that. And so this is a picture of my family. There's 11 of us there with my mom. My brothers live in Alberta and Manitoba, and for some strange reason, there was a window of time right in January of 2021 where those restrictions were lifted in Manitoba, and my brothers were able to travel out to BC for his little celebration of life, just a family celebration, and they were able to come back and not have to go into isolation. And that changed about 2 weeks after that. And if Dad would have passed away just a little bit later, they wouldn't have been able to come. So it was wonderful to be together, all 10 of us. And the restrictions in BC at the time for funeral homes, I was working in a funeral home. I was working in the funeral home where this the service took place. The restrictions were 10 people. Couldn't have any more than 10 people at a service. And you'll see 11 in the picture. But my sister and I worked at the funeral home, so we didn't have to count as people attached to the funeral. So we could all be together, all 11 of us. Isn't that amazing? So that's what happened in January of 2021. And then in June of 2021, we had a heat dome. I don't know if you remember that in BC. You probably heard it on the news. It was crazy. I circled 44 there. But there was actually a day, one day at least, where it hit actually 50 degrees in BC Celsius. And there was more seniors that died from the heat dome than COVID at that time. It was just crazy. It was absolutely crazy. Working in a funeral home, I'm telling you, it was crazy. The morgues were so full because there's not even a lot of homes out there. Well, there's more now that have air conditioning, and they're just not prepared for that kind of heat whatsoever. So it actually had a lot of devastating effects. So that was June, and then moving on, October of that year, my mom had just turned 91, and she was in really good health. She prayed every day because my dad had dementia. She didn't want to die of dementia. And so she prayed every day that the Lord would give her a sound mind, and he did all the way through. October, she tripped on something in her own suite or fell. We don't know exactly how it happened, but she fractured her skull, and she had brain injury, and she was unconscious in 24 hours and gone in 4 days. And that was almost harder than Dad, because, Dad had, he had lived with dementia. We knew that he wasn't doing well. Mom was in such good health. And so that was really a surprise to all of us. And so then we knew that, our time out there was coming to a close. And, but here again, the mercy of God. 2 weeks later, you can go to the next slide. The Pineapple Express, do you remember hearing about that on the news? This incredible atmospheric river is what they called it. Hit BC, and it hit right where we were living in Chilliwack. That is a picture of Abbotsford, 20 minutes down the road from us. And it flooded out barns, and oh my goodness, cattle were lost, and it was just a mess. All the major highways, mountainous kind of highways. Do you remember hearing, the Trans-Canada had been washed out and all of these things? We were in Chilliwack. Chilliwack literally became an island. We were flooded from Chilliwack to Abbotsford. Couldn't go on the highway that way. Couldn't go east because the mountain passes Trans-Canada, everything. They were washed out. And so we became an island for about 2 months. And had Mom passed away a couple weeks later, our family would not have been able to gather again. But when she passed, our whole family was able to come together again and celebrate her life, which was just amazing. So, somehow in the midst of all of the craziness, I just continually saw the hand of God and the mercy of God and just the kindness extended to us beyond probably what we deserve, any of us. But there was tragedy going on around us, but you can still see the goodness of God in all of it. And that was kind of 2021. And so we said goodbye to Mom and knew we were coming back. And so you can head to the next slide. I knew that even though our world seemed like it was in such a chaotic state with everything that was going on with COVID and all of the stuff that we just didn't really feel like we understood, I loved that picture. When I saw it online, I just thought it's so beautiful to know that we can rest knowing God has the whole world in his hands. And we don't know what tomorrow holds. 2021 turned out to be a year of surprises for us from start to finish. But God knew it all, and I still believed 100% that he had the whole world in his hands, and we were going to be okay. So that was 2021, and the beginning of 2022, we were moving back to Manitoba. We knew we were moving back. And my sisters actually dispersed as well and moved to, two of them moved to Alberta. And one day, just before one of my sisters was moving, we were hiking through the forest, and it was a kind of a foggy day when we went for a hike I was born and raised on the West Coast, and so it was near my childhood home. We saw this beautiful picture, and I just thought this looked to me like life. You see the path quite clearly right in front of you, but off in the distance it's a little foggy, and you can't always tell what's coming around the corner. We sure had one of those years in 2021 and right back to 2020, where it just seemed like around every turn there was something else, and we didn't know what was coming, at any point, and yet you could see in the distance, like we know God is the light that is there, and He is the one that we can trust at all times. He's there waiting for us, and we had a funny experience when we were planning to move back to Brandon. We booked our moving truck, a couple months in advance. And when it came time to actually picking up our truck, we went to we called the truck rental company and asked what location we were supposed to pick up our truck. And they told us that there were no trucks on the Lower Mainland. I guess there was a mass exodus from the West Coast east, and there were no trucks. And this was literally a couple days before we were to pick up our truck, and had to be out of our home there and needed to get back here, and there were no trucks. And so I was like, how are you a rental truck company and you have no trucks? But we talked about, but we have a reservation. What does that mean? Well, we're experiencing something that we've never experienced before. There's just this mass exodus of people moving from the west to the east. And somehow God worked that out for us, and we ended up, we had booked a 26-foot truck instead of 26-foot truck. We ended up with two trucks, a 20-foot and a 15-foot, pulling our car on a car hauler, which was now 35 feet of truck. And somehow God knew that the 26-foot truck was actually not going to be enough for our stuff, and we needed 35 feet of truck because we used all 35 feet of truck. And on top of that, because they messed up the reservation and they didn't have a 26-foot truck, they gave us half off of our truck rental overall. So somehow we got our two trucks for less than the price of one truck, and we had that much more, 9 foot more of packing. So God was good in all of that. But I love that picture. I have it. I actually printed it on canvas. I have it in our home today, and it just reminds me so much of life. This journey that we're on with God, where we just have to trust that light that we see in the future. We don't know everything along the path between where we are and where that light is, but we know that He is the light. And there's a song by Chris Tomlin. I'm not sure if you've heard it or not, but it's got some really interesting words. If you want to flip to the next slide. Oh, nope, sorry, that's something. Okay, don't worry about it. I don't know where it went, but that's okay. You can go back to that. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Is he worthy? There's, in this song, you kind of hear a question being asked, and then you hear a choir of people answering. Do you feel the world is broken? We do. Do you feel the shadows deepen? We do. And this is the line that I loved. But do you know that all the dark won't stop the light from getting through? We do. And I guess that's sort of where, that's when I saw that picture in the forest, I felt like the light is always there. God is always there. And there can be a lot of confusion going on in the world around us. We've all, we should all pat ourselves on the back. We've somehow made it through the last 3 years. Historic years. These last 3 years will be talked about forever in history. They are historic years that we have just lived through. We did not, none of us saw that coming. We did not know we would go through what we have in the last 3 years, but we have. And there was a lot of other things that were complications with COVID and because of COVID, and a lot of crippling things, weird things, and a lot of unknowns. But we just can't take our eyes off the fact that there's a light down the path. And in that light, God knows everything. And we can trust that light. We might not be able to see perfectly clearly going forward, but God can. So, at the end of the day, that old hymn, "'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus," man, that is truth. It is so sweet to trust in Jesus. And that is really the only source of peace and joy that we can have when we go through times of unknowns. So I'm going to mess you up on the slides. Let's see. We can go to, go past this, the next one. So somehow when I came back to Brandon, and I didn't have a clue of what I was coming back to. I felt like I was 18 again, and I didn't know what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I actually had tried not working for about a year, and it didn't work well for me. It didn't provide me with a good mental health space, and so I knew that I needed to work. I love working. I just wasn't sure what I was supposed to do, and it just so happened that literally the exact time I came back to Brandon is when the executive director, Amanda, who you had here last year, she resigned. And her family was moving to Winnipeg. Her husband took a job of the principalship of Linden Christian School in Winnipeg. And so they were moving, and I had known Amanda for years, and she talked to me about the job at the pregnancy center, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be a perfect fit for that. I wasn't sure how that was going to all work, but somehow God had that all figured out, and I ended up in the job. God did tell me when we were driving back. I had a lot of time to talk to God in that truck with no Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or anything, so I couldn't talk to my husband on the phone. I just was alone with God in the truck, and that was actually really good too. God reminded me there really strongly. He reminded me, before you reach tomorrow, I am there. And I loved that thought. Sometimes we don't know what tomorrow holds. It's foggy in the distance, and yet the beauty of life is knowing that God is in all of our tomorrows. He's already there. He knows what we need before we even get there. And that's what happened when we came back to Brandon. God already knew, and he had it all planned out. And so I took the job at the center, and I couldn't be happier. I love it. I was a little nervous going in, thinking, well, I haven't studied. I mean, I'm a mom and a grandma, and obviously I've had my own children, but I haven't studied a lot into the whole area of this, and so I wasn't really sure what I was getting into. But there's so much ministry involved in it, and that is my background, and I love that about the center. I love being on the front lines, helping women find new hope and healing for their past, new hope for their future. I absolutely love that part of the job, and I'm just so grateful that that we have the opportunity to do that. This is a center that belongs to all of Westman. It is run just as much by you as it is by me, because it's only with your support that we do it. And so everything that we do at the center, we're just partnering with you guys. And I just want you to know that it is a place where we see God move in lives, and it's just absolutely wonderful. So we have 6 staff, 3 full-time, 3 part-time, and our client calls in the last few years. 2 years ago, our client calls were 243. Last year, our client calls were over 1,100. It's crazy. It's just, there's a lot of immigration that's happened, so there's a lot of families coming in with nothing, and so we're seeing a lot of need there. There's just a lot of need in general, and because we're not just we still do all the pregnancy phone calls and all that kind of stuff, but we also have housing and different things. So it puts us in a greater area of need. And so we've partnered with a lot of really great agencies in Brandon. We work alongside, CFS and addictions and mental health and a lot of things, because a lot of our women that are coming in have a lot of needs in a lot of those areas. And so it's just so great to be able to partner with really great agencies and get the help that women need to go forward and be healthy in their parenting. So we do, I'll just give you a really brief description of kind of what the center does. I'm sure you all know that we have lots of ways that we reach out and help women. This is wonderful. Thank you. The supplies that we get in, we give out to women free of charge, and they're on a month-to-month basis. So we allow them to call in once a month and ask for support, and we make a big bag of stuff for them, and clothing, diapers, formula, wipes, whatever they need, we try and help them with. But we also, meet with women when they've had losses, pregnancy loss, miscarriage, or stillbirth, or post-abortion. We meet with women and help them through some of the healing involved in that. I thought I'd share a few stories with you this morning. These are stories that have these are real life stories that have happened. Oh, yes, our staff and our volunteers are wonderful. The fourth option is the care closet, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in one of the stories. But usually when women come into the center, they think of 3 options. When they come in to talk to us, they think of 3 options. I'm either going to parent this child, I'm going to think about maybe adoption, or abortion. And we like to present them with a 4th option, because we do believe that most women truly do not want to abort. There are circumstances in their life that they're presently living with that are making them feel like it is the best option for their pregnancy. And so we like to present them with what we call the 4th option, which is where churches come in, and these are the supplies that we are able to offer women. We tell them from birth until 2 years old, you can come and see us once a month for a bag of clothes and diapers and formula and whatever. and we will do everything we can do to walk with you through this time and support you in literally, they wouldn't have to buy an article of clothing from birth till 2 years old. We will supply all of that. It's all secondhand clothes. It's all good used clothes. We sort it all, we wash it all, and we give them beautiful clothes for their kids. The bigger items, cribs, playpens, all of those things, we get them by donation as well. They're used, and we pass them on to moms in need. We have waiting lists for them, and so those things those are big money items too. And so having those donated to us and allowing us to give them to moms takes so much pressure off of them financially. And quite often, the reason for an abortion is financial. And so having those things offered to them, we tell them we will do our best to supply you with everything that you need before baby is born and for the next 2 years. It's a significant decision maker for women. And just knowing that they will have that kind of support, as well as the housing piece. You know, some of them don't know where they're going to live and that type of thing. So that's a huge advantage as well. Story number 1, a young woman came to, these are stories that have happened since I've been there. I mean, there's years of stories before, but I'm just going to share 3 very recent stories with you. A young woman came in and she tested pregnancy or tested positive for pregnancy, and her parents wanted her to have an abortion, and she did not want to have an abortion. And she spoke with our client care director and said that she really didn't feel like she could live with the aftermath of having an abortion. And so she was at odds with her parents, and she was still living at home. And our client care director talked to her for a few hours and kind of went through different options. And sometimes we have these conversations with women. They leave, we never see them again. We don't know what decision they've made. Sometimes we do. Sometimes they'll come back and talk with us again. And she did. She came back, phoned about a week later and said, my parents have kicked me out. And so she now is pregnant and doesn't have a place to live. So she was staying with a friend for a little while and trying to figure out what to do. And so her options were kind of have an abortion like my parents want me to, or do what I want and I have to try and figure out how to live independently on my own. That's a lot. It's a pretty heavy decision. And she was pretty committed to not having the abortion. And so our client care director, spent some time talking with her again and tried to help her figure some things out, and kind of left it with, she's living with her friend right now. She was safe. She was okay. And she was going to take some time to try and sort things out. Didn't hear from her again for quite a while. And then she called back, came in, I can't remember which. And her parents had reconsidered, and she was back at home with them. And they had committed to walking the pregnancy with her and helping her with the child. And so, we were happy to hear that. And that's kind of how the story ended for her. Her parents came on board with her and helped her, and we were able to walk through some things with her. We were able to provide, we have a doula that works with us that helps with prenatal and all that kind of stuff, and she was able to meet with her and go through some of those things. And it's just been really wonderful to be able to see her path, and really there's so many things that are involved in an unexpected pregnancy. It's not just this person or the decision they're making. There's other things that are involved. Another time I had a lady come in who was in her late 30s, and she was meeting with me because she had an emotional breakdown in her home. just a few days before this. And she ended up literally on the floor in front of her teenage children, sobbing, and couldn't tell them why. But she had an abortion when she was in her late teen years and had never told a soul. Only the dad, her partner at that time, knew about it, and they had never told a soul. And she actually married him, and he was the father of her children that she had today. And she thought, she was a professional woman working in a professional job in Brandon, and didn't really think about it for years and years and years and years. Just pushed it down, shoved it down inside, and wasn't going to think about it anymore. And then her children were in their teen years, and something triggered for her, and she just collapsed in a heap on the floor. And so she found us on the internet, and she came in for an appointment and talked to me. And I had the privilege to be able to talk with her about, what was your home like when you were growing up, and I found out there was some faith background there, and talked to her about that. And, she had never told her parents because she knew that they wouldn't approve of it. And, and that was her decision to make. And I understood that. But with that, she had buried the guilt and the shame that had come with this deep down inside, and had never been able to really get rid of that, and was living with this for already 20 years of her life. And so I was able to talk to her about what forgiveness looks like, what forgiveness from God looks like, and how that changes our lives, and freedom from that. And it just turned into such a beautiful God moment where I said to her, I'm comfortable praying with you. Would you be comfortable with me praying with you? And she thought for a few minutes, and then she said, yeah, I would be comfortable with that. So she let me pray with her, and I when she left, I was just like, thank you, God. Thank you that this woman doesn't have to live with that weighing her down for the whole rest of her life. Just to help women understand that there's forgiveness, and we can move forward, and we can't change the events of our past, but we also don't have to carry them for the rest of our lives with us. That's the whole reason Jesus came, right? And so, we're celebrating Palm Sunday today, Easter Sunday next week. I love Easter probably more than Christmas, because I just feel like the message of Easter is everything that we believe. It's forgiveness, and it's the power of the cross. And so to have her leave and feel that there was forgiveness, I was just like, oh, thank you, God. Thank you that we can be here and offer this kind of hope and healing for women. There's another, or 1 Corinthians 13. Love does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. And I just love the fact that we can be a place that brings hope and healing. There's another story I wanted to share, just the last story with you. A woman came in, and she was just hunched over completely. Body language, right? Her body language was very depressed. She was kind of at the end of her rope. She was a mom of 3 little kids. She was pregnant again. And, we don't always know the circumstances of, obviously we understand how it happens, but we don't always understand the circumstances of why it's happened. And sometimes we go into those conversations with the women. And in her situation, her immediate need was her hydro had been cut off. Her bills had got behind. She didn't have money when it was income tax season to get her income taxes done, which meant without her income taxes done, she couldn't have her child tax credit. Without her child tax credit, she didn't have the money to pay her bills. And so, she was in a pickle, because although it might sound like it's summer, her hydro being cut off isn't really a big deal. It's a big deal because they can actually apprehend your children in that situation. And so, she was panicked and didn't know what to do. And so our directors, our client care director, sat with her for literally the entire afternoon, making phone call after phone call to agencies and different places, and worked it so that, found somebody to do her income tax for her, talked about how important that was to, get that piece together so that she could have the right kind of income coming in to make sure her bills were paid. And, and when I don't know, you remember, ladies, when you're running around chasing little people around, your head is so full in your mummy brain, you don't really have necessarily the brain power to think through all of these other things. And that's where she was at. She just needed somebody to sit with her and help her through this stuff. And anyway, client care director worked it so that these things were taken care of. She called the next day. She had gone to get her income taxes done, and so she was going to have all of that back pay from that, and she would be able to pay her bills. Her hydro was turned back on. Everything changed literally in an afternoon just by having somebody sit with her and help her through these things. She was pregnant at the time that she came in. She had actually called. We didn't realize this until later when she shared with us. She had called the week before to ask about an abortion. Did she want to have an abortion? No. But she was in a state where she really didn't see how her life could go forward with another child. She was already so far behind, and she felt like there was no other option. And she did not have the abortion. She ended up carrying the child, and things got turned around in her world. And just, a few moments can make a big difference in somebody's trajectory going forward. And it reminded me, I have this memory constantly in the job that I am right now of how one event in my family history changed the whole course of my family's purpose going forward. And so many out of the 10 children in our family have ended up in some area of ministry, serving the Lord, either full-time in ministry or part-time in a church. And we could have been raised by an alcoholic father. So one event in our family history changed the course of direction for our family and for the next generation and the next generation. I have nieces and nephews who are now in ministry, so it's passing down through the generations. And that's just how God works. And I think about these women that come in to see us, and, the event that brings them in to see us is usually feeling fairly traumatic for them. But I'm just so grateful that we have this place where they can come, and we want them to know that they are loved. They are loved by God and God's people, and we want to be able to bring them hope and healing, and to see their life change direction. And, just this one woman who she came back a few weeks later, and she asked our client care director, would you mind helping me make out a budget for the future going forward? I'd like to save for a car. And, all of a sudden she went from 2 weeks earlier, hunched over, feeling like the weight of the world was on her shoulders, to now I can see hope for the future. And I want to make some of these really good decisions for my family going forward. I think it's going to be easier if I have a car. And so can you help me to, figure out a budget to save for a car? We're a pregnancy center, but our greatest job, our greatest love is support. We want to be there to support women and families in the Westman area. And that looks like so many different things. And we are just so grateful that God has given us the opportunity to do this. It's really like, I credit it to Amanda, the director before myself. She was really forward with Facebook and different things, and we have gained so much exposure in the Westman area in the last few years, which is why our calls have gone up so much. But it is so wonderful to see the things that God is doing, and I don't know where that will take us. I'm looking at that forest fog picture, and I don't know where that's going to take us a few years down the road. I don't think we can continue to grow the way we have been growing. We have to find our ground somewhere, but the need is definitely there, and we just want to be open and listen for God's voice going forward. We do have beautiful apartments that we have for women. Can you go back to that last slide? Yeah, those are our apartments. But these verses out of Isaiah, this is kind of what we feel like our mandate is at the center. The Spirit of the Lord is upon us, and He has anointed us to bring good news to the poor. He has sent us to comfort the brokenhearted and to proclaim captives to be released and prisoners to be freed. And, that woman who came in 20 years living with the guilt and the shame of an abortion and never being able to get rid of those thoughts. I deal with women almost every week post-abortion who tell me, the dreams that they have and the nightmares and the trauma that comes after abortion is so intense. And to be able to meet with these women and offer freedom and offer release from this is the good news of the gospel to me. And I'm so honored that we can do this with God. I can't do this on my own, but God is the one who brings freedom and release. And I love those verses, and I checked into them a little bit further to see what was this really talking about. And literally there were people that in those days they wore their headdresses with ashes on their head representing shame and guilt, and they had to walk around like that in the community. And God was saying no, and so he wanted people to go to these people and tell them you can be released from the guilt and the shame, and change their headdress of ash mourning to a headdress of joy and happiness. And I feel like that's the mandate that God is giving all of us as His children. This is the good news of the gospel. This is the reason for Easter, right? This is what we can do. We can go into our communities and our workplaces and our schools and wherever God has us go day by day and bring good news, the good news of release from guilt and shame and freedom from past. And we just happen to have people walk through our doors looking for that. And I'm so grateful for that. And every day it seems like God is giving us the opportunity to have these kinds of conversations with women. And we are just so grateful for the goodness of God in this. We do have 4 apartments. Those are the Youth for Christ apartments in Brandon, and we have the second floor on one of those apartment buildings, and it's locked off, and it's got security cameras, and they're beautiful 2-bedroom apartment suites that we are able to put women in, and there's no set time limit for them to be in our suites. We allow them to be there until they feel like they are ready to be in independent living, and whatever the course of that journey might look like. We are not just housing, we are actually a housing program. So our housing is independent living. It's not residential care, so we don't have 24/7 need for staff, and that's really great for us as a center to not have to provide that. But it's independent living with support. So we offer, they're part of group sessions. They attend group sessions every week. They have individual development plans made out with them when they come in. So, depending on what their past history has been and what kind of needs they have. It might be healthy relationships. It might be financial planning. It might be, positive parenting skills. It could be all kinds of things. Quite often they're women who have had other children and have not been successful in parenting, and their children have been taken from them. So we're trying to turn that tide and give these women positive parenting skills so that they will be able to parent their children and walk into a new future. A lot of women that have lived in our suites, their terminology is, it feels like a fresh start. And we believe that's really what it is. It's God giving these women an opportunity for a fresh start. They have the support system around them that they need to make positive decisions going forward. So our longest residence to date is, she's been in there for almost 2 years. And she found herself pregnant when she was in university, and found out shortly after she found out she was pregnant that she was having twins. And so she moved into our suite, and she has been in there the whole time. Her first year was very busy with momming the twins, and her second year she went back to ACC and she's taken business admin, and she's just about to graduate with that. The end of April now, and she will be moving out of our suites because she is to the point where she's ready for independent living, and we're thrilled with that. And so this is kind of where we feel our housing has the opportunity to give women a new start, a fresh start. So yeah, thank you as a church for being a part of what God is doing at the Pregnancy Center. We literally, absolutely, 100% could not do what we do without you guys. So we are very, very grateful for your support. And yeah, I mean, just continue to pray for us. It's some days are exhausting. Not that we're running around necessarily, but it's just mentally exhausting, emotionally exhausting, hearing people's real lives unpacked in front of you, and realizing that some of these women feel like they've never been heard, never been seen in their whole lives, and they just need an opportunity for a fresh start. They need someone to walk with them and just provide good choices going forward, and it's great to see God turn the tide for one woman and her family that will result in a different direction for life for her children and their children and their children. So this is generational. It's not just the successes that we see here and now. This is generational, and just like my family, it's generational. And we're just so grateful to be able to be there to walk with these women. So yeah, pray for us. And thank you for your donations of any kind. We are truly, truly grateful. But we run on the prayers of God's people. And so we value your prayer very, very much. And we do have prayer team that work with us, and we send out prayer requests to them on a weekly basis. And if you're sitting at home and you have nothing else to do and you like to pray, come and talk to me. I'd love to add your email to the prayer list. We have a newsletter. I put the sign up for the newsletter at the back. If you're interested in receiving our newsletter on a monthly basis, we'd love to do that too, just to keep you informed of what we're doing. And I'm just so grateful to be able to come and meet the people behind the donations and the support that comes in, knowing that we're a big team working together. And this is an opportunity, one of many opportunities I realize that churches are presented with to do good in the community. But from our center to you, we are truly thankful for your support. Thank you so much for allowing me to share with you this morning.